There, now I look 10 years younger. I can film from above. Okay. Alright. Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, and I'm my so-called handmade life on Instagram, and I'm Mamatronic on Ravelry. I'm pretty active on Ravelry. There's a Ravelry group for my so-called handmade life, and every episode I have show notes and a place for you to answer the questions I ask in a thread in that group. But you can also answer on YouTube comments or blog post comments if my blog will let you. I still haven't changed over my platform. I've been too busy. It's happening after the home remodel. And so, if you answer in the thread for the episode or comments on YouTube or any place like that, just expect that I'll probably talk about what you say, and you kind of help decide where our conversation goes. So I really appreciate your comments. It means a lot to me. It's been a while. I keep saying I'm going to start podcasting every week. Well, let me tell you, I would love to podcast every week. I miss it and I like it because you guys who comment to me, I mean, I think about what you say, and I like the input. I need it because there's nobody else to talk about these things with. So keep commenting, please, and be patient with me. Sometimes you just can't, you're just too busy, and it's been like that lately. I don't even have a child in grade school, and yet the end of the school year has made my life extra busy. Different groups I'm in, doing senior photos. Spot! No. I'm gonna have to close the door because he's an idiot. And he sees a paper bag blow down the street. And he's got a bar. Yeah, clouds or something. Vapors exist. I have a lot of junk to show you. Okay. Turn off the phone. Okay. Now I'm ready. I started to film this earlier last week, but I just felt so rushed because we had to go somewhere and I just had this small window of time. Oh, do you like these? They look grungy after working on our house this week. They're really hot. I'm taking them off. That's another reason I haven't podcasted much lately. I've pulled my wrists doing stupid things, too many things, plus I knit all the time, so I have not been knitting very much at all the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I did senior photos for my son-in-law, and they came out really good. Even though, like I said, early morning's best or late in the evening, and they picked the day where we wouldn't be there in the evening. So I'm like, early morning. And of course, they're up at like noon. So it was, midday when we went. But we found a nice shady place, and they ended up great. And because he's handsome, it works. Anyway, but then I did some for his brother who's graduating high school, and that was fun. Also, not very sunny, but they'll be good. And so I'll have some editing to do. Editing photos is one of the things that messed my wrist up. Which, does that not sound so stupid? I knit all the time, right? And I didn't realize till I wore braces how many ways these joints pivot in my wrist and hands. I do that a lot. I started doing a different kind of pull-up or chin-up, and that I don't do a lot of pull-ups, and I don't do them from a dead hang, so I'm not like some kind of Marine. I'm just trying to maintain whatever strength I have in my body. But I started doing a few more. And between that and a crazy weeding session I did all day one Sunday, and then 2 days of just tap, 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 tap editing photos, screwed my wrists up. So I just don't want to have problems from it, so I'm totally resting. Now, if I put on these braces, I can kind of knit, and it's really robotic, large movements, so it's very slow and not precise. So I've set down sweater knitting things that have to be precise, and I've picked up like accessories that don't have tiny needles, and I don't have to be as precise with the gauge. It's not a big deal. I've got some yarn to play with, so you'll hear more about that. Let me tell you, I went to DFW Fiber Fest. That's in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I went last year, and I posted a bunch of stuff, and I've used very little of the yarn that I got last year, to be honest. I'm just like, it's like I'm saving it for something special, and or I've really focused on sweaters this year, and I didn't buy large sweater quantities. I got a little bit here from a dyer, a little bit there, and I did a lot of natural yarns last year. I was excited about the offering they had there. So I want to do that. I tried to visit different places this year, and I'll just say I don't like to like show stuff and stuff and stuff. But I'm going to show some of what I got because I like the dyers and what they're doing, and getting to talk to them and meet them, it was nice. So I kind of want to brag on them and show the nice things that they have, or the little bit that I purchased from that. I have been doing this. This is one of those things that I could finish it wearing braces. It's the Grotine shawl by Carolyn Dick. She was Electric Trees on Instagram, but I think she's changed her handle to C Dick Designs. And it's a linen stitch shawl. It's really, really nice. You can see that the stitch pattern. It's just really nice. One of you asked me in the comments last episode what camera I use, because you said it picked up colors really nicely. It's a Canon 6D, the newer version that's better for video with autofocus. And you can get them used on Adorama. Sometimes, like I had the original Canon 6D, and I got it used just really affordable years ago, but it didn't do video, and I felt like, well, it's a good backup camera and it's a good still photo camera, but I wanted something that could do video too, so I went with the newer one when I got a new camera. Also, it's just easier with a touch screen and a flip screen. So anyway, that's the answer to your question. This shawl is for, well, it says for fingering weight, but really you could use any weight of yarn you want, knowing that if you use a larger, like a sport or a DK, you're going to get a bigger shawl. But I loved using size 10 needles to knit a shawl, and this took 2 skeins, but I have quite a bit left of the second skein of DK. And I used Tosh DK in free range eggs, I think is what this is called, and these really do look like farm eggs. My friends who raised chickens and had eggs, sometimes I would collect the eggs for them when they were out of town, and yes, these colors were all in there. Interestingly enough, there's been talk about Madeline Tosh and not responding quickly on the conversation about racism. And I don't mean, really, right before filming this, I see that Carolyn has been very outspoken on their Instagram. So this is knit in Madeline Tosh, though, and this is what I have. And I'm going to use the yarn that I've got. Also, I feel like they made an apology for, oh, should I even get into this? I guess they didn't speak up in January when a lot of yarn companies were, and then in February, or in January, actually for Martin Luther King Day, I think they came out with a colorway, and some people felt like it was in poor taste to profit off of commemorating the Martin Luther King Day. Then they've come up with some new colorways having to do with racism or inclusion, and again, it was for profit. And so a lot of people were disappointed about that. All of this I learned, like I knew something was going on with them, but this recent thing I saw yesterday. So yeah, it's been a zoo over in those comments. I looked at it and I like started to read what's going on, because I have a lot of Madeline Tosh there at Texas Dyer. They were located. I mean, I think the dye studio is still in Texas, and they used to have a store, and I've gone to it a bunch. It was like a big pilgrimage. It was just the yarn I always wanted to use when I was a beginning knitter, and I couldn't afford anything but Hobby Lobby yarns. So yeah, it was important to me. I wanted to know what was going on, but it was like 600 comments. And I was like, I read for a bit, and then I was like, I gotta stop. I gotta take a break, because people were getting really angry with one another. But the bottom line is, they said they were sorry for not being clear about their policy sooner, which it's their prerogative. They don't have to be clear how they feel about racism. I mean, they have people of color working for them, but if they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to. It's just that they may lose business because of that. But the colorways for profit thing, they said that they regret it. Amy actually said she regretted it, and they were going to take any profit made from them and donate it to, I think, the Martin Luther King Foundation. So anyway, it's just a coincidence. That is the yarn brand I used to knit my Grotein. Grotein, it's a really good pattern. Addictive, not boring at all, but easy to memorize, and I could take it anywhere. I could do it during watching a TV show or something. I enjoyed it completely. My bind off row is might be a little sloppy. I may have to redo that. I'm going to block it and see. But I love it. I love the way it looks. So, Grotein has a crochet version. Now, if you buy the knitted version, forever, that money is donated to True North Aid, which is a charity that benefits Indigenous people in Canada. If you buy the crochet version, that was worked up, I think, based on her design by a different knitter or crocheter, the money goes straight to Indigenous charities for Indigenous people in the United States. I can't remember the name for that. Anyway, it's very warm here, so I'm not wearing it right now. I don't even know why I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I took this with me to Fiberfest, and I worked on it some. I stayed with Chitanya one night, and we had a great time knitting and talking. I stayed up way too late for how early I was getting up, but I enjoyed it immensely. And this was a good project to chat with people while working on. I got to work on it a little at the Fiber Festival also. It fit really nicely in my bag. So I did want to say that I would like to do a giveaway of one of these patterns, the crochet or the whichever you would choose. I don't have it together to do it right now. I would like to do it with some of Carolyn's yarn. I think that she's a dyer or dyes with her mother, but I just can't get any links to it, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her about it, so I'll see what I work up. But I would like to do a giveaway on this soon. In the United States, it's not great. This is one of the most underserved parts of our population, and apparently it's the same in Canada. So anyway, it would be a good thing to check out those patterns, and if you don't want to buy the pattern, donate to one of those organizations. So Chitanya was a great host, and we had a good time. We had dinner, my husband and I, with her and her husband, and it was a lot of fun. And then I stayed with them so we could leave early for the Fiber Festival. And that morning we had breakfast with Kelly, who I met way back when I went to that Vera and Hohi Knit America at the Madeline Tosh store. So I hadn't really kept up with her since then. Neither of us had. So it was nice to catch up with her, kind of reacquaint ourselves, and chat while we knitted and ate breakfast. I also met Heather of Ravelry, so I had never met her. So it was really nice conversation and a nice little breakfast together. And then we headed out to the festival. Someone had told me that I had a badge waiting because I do a podcast, even though it's a small thing. There was a podcaster meetup, and I figured most of us would be like little, no-name, small podcasts, because I don't know many in Texas. And but the badge said press on it, and I just thought, oh, that's weird, having a press badge. I just felt uncomfortable, like a little nervous, like what is going to happen when I go here. I don't know what I pictured, like everyone standing around and kicking at the ground in a circle going, hey, yeah, awkward conversation. But as soon as I got there, I was walking past the Hill Country Weavers booth. I went there like 3 times looking for Dawn Barker. But this was when I first got there. I heard my name, but then I thought, oh no, that's somebody I don't know behind me. No one's going to know me here. And I heard it again, and Nancy was talking to me. And so she introduced herself, and she's La Jolla Girl on Instagram. And her friend Ida, who is Ida Knits, they introduced themselves to me, and Nancy watches the podcast, and it was just really sweet, and we just had a lot in common. We've had similar years in 2018, some things we share in common. And they were just so friendly. I just immediately felt at ease. Even though, these festivals can be very crowded. And you could just feel a little overwhelmed, sensory overload. Because it's, I like all this stuff, but it's just stuff everywhere, people, and having this badge. I just felt awkward. I didn't after meeting Nancy and Ida. So Nancy, Ida, thank you for making me feel so comfortable when I got there. And I was so taken by surprise that anyone recognized me, and that someone who really watches regularly, was there. It was just sweet. And they both had on really great knits, and I didn't get to tell you guys. I was thinking about it as I looked through my photos. I was so taken off guard. I didn't say anything about your Caitlin Hunter sweaters, but Nancy had on a Tanya. It was beautiful. And Ida had on a Zweig. So, both of which I want to knit one day. They made me feel great. I told you I went to Hill Country Weavers booth like 3 times looking for Dawn. I actually saw her somewhere else, but I didn't know it was Dawn. She seemed familiar, but Dawn doesn't take lots of pictures of herself on Instagram, so I don't really recognize her from it. And so the last time I went to their booth, I said, is Dawn here? And someone said, yeah, she's right there. She's right by me. And we finally got to meet. Dawn does Chasing Rabbits fiber. So that's her Instagram name and her yarn name, her yarn company name. And I appreciate her Instagram feed and her yarn, and then now her designs. She's designed some really great shawls. And one I knew I wanted to knit when I first saw it, and I was waiting to get yarn for it with her help to pick it out, because I knew that Hill Country Weavers would have a large selection. They do at their store, and I have gotten her yarn before at the store. I still need to knit it. I got it my last trip visiting my daughter. So here's what we picked out. Oh, the design I want to knit of Dawn's is the Columbia shawl. You may have seen it. The main picture for it is sun coming through the sheerness of the mohair stripes there. So it's a very high contrast. Isn't that beautiful? It's very graphic. I love it. Well, in person, she had that sample there. It's the same color in her solo singles base, and her mohair. But they actually dye up differently. So it's a very subtle color change. Let's see if this will brighten up for you. Yeah. So, without the light through it, I don't know. It's just neat, the difference that that makes. So hers is a very subtle contrast. I wanted something a little more high contrast if it was on my body, because I liked the look of that with the light pouring through. And so I knew when I saw this cameo colorway in her mohair gossamer base, I knew I wanted this. It's so funny that I keep picking colors like this. I never saw myself as knitting with pinks or variations of pink and red, and yet I just can't seem to get enough of them. And then Port would be the contrast color, and this is just her solo single space. So you can see together they make, the skein fell apart, and I can't make it look pretty again. These look really nice and contrasty together. So I appreciated her help looking, as I looked for the right yarn for her design, and I just really appreciated meeting her. And she told me another friend on Instagram lived in Texas. I guess I might have known it when we first friended each other, but over the years I've forgotten if I ever did know it. So maybe one of these days Julie will catch up also. I really want to go to one of the retreats that Hill Country Weavers puts on. But I don't know. It's hard to get into retreats lately. So we'll see. Nice to meet you though, Dawn. I also saw Diane, the Suburban Stitcher. And Diane remembered me. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if it's just because of my podcast. I doubt that she'd have a lot of time to watch podcasts. Well, where's my Suburban Stitcher yarn? Here we go. Nope. Yes. Or it might be from the last, how could she though, from the last festival. I mean, I don't really see how you do it when you have a booth and people that know you well because they watch your podcast or they buy your products or follow you on Instagram, how you could keep up with all the names. But that's definitely a gift to be able to do that. So it was nice to see her and to shop in her booth. She has the Spanish Moss colorway is my favorite colorway by her. I didn't get it the last festival. I wanted to, but I picked 3 that would go together in the Suburban wrap, which I still haven't knit. Story of my life, isn't it? Like I said, I focused on sweaters a lot this year, mostly oversized sweaters, and trying some new things. So, and doing this podcast, it slowed my knitting down. This is her silky mohair lace, and it's oyster. It's not the same as the Spanish moss, but they're very close, and that's what she had left. She might have had Spanish moss at one point in this space. I probably should have gotten her Surrey blend because it's special and it's a little unusual, but I went with this because I know of several patterns that use a couple of skeins of sock or singles base, fingering weight bases with mohair. So I thought these would blend well together. And I have not ever knit something variegated in mohair like this with a light color. It's different for me. So I was excited about it. And Spanish moss hangs from the trees in Texas, East Texas, and in Louisiana, the oak trees. This is really pretty. These colors are great. A good representation. Okay, another Texas dyer that I love is Mustache from Mustache Yarns. Stacy. Her name isn't Mustache. Can you imagine? Stacy of Mustache Yarns. She's got a great pattern out, or a pattern is out for her yarn. I don't know that she wrote the pattern. Let's see. It's the Epic Galactic Cowl. And yes, it is Must Knit Designs. So I'm gonna show you a picture of it. Basically what it is, it's like a long sock tube, and it just goes around and around and around and around, and you wear it as a cowl. Or you could do it as a shawl, a scarf if you wanted, and just loop it a million times around your neck. But I mean, why not just make it a cowl? And you use her leftovers of her sock yarn, or any self-striping sock yarn. But you can see she used all of her Star Wars colorways. And back when the movies were coming out, she did a bazillion of colorways, like from old movies, new movies, all of it. So I would like to make that. I don't have leftovers from self-striping yarn, that many, and I kind of like her yarns. I feel like they, all of the minis I've seen, they gel well together. And so I got some minis that she had there. I got quite a few, so that I could make a big one. I'm just gonna hold them up. I mean, like, only 2 are like probably Star Wars themed that I recognize. I didn't care if it was Star Wars themed. That doesn't matter to me. I just wanted them to kind of have harmonious in color. So you can see, they are harmonious. I can see how I can make them blend one from another. And you know, they all stripe differently. Some are 2-row stripes, some are 2 and 4, and you could actually use her tonals here and there. So I'm excited to work on that, and to, you know, just to have her colorways. Also, she had a new colorway she was debuting at the festival called Ready Player One, which is one of my next books I'm going to read. The Expanse, the new book, came out, and I'm really enjoying reading it. Book 8, so there's only going to be one more. I had to read it first, but then Ready Player One is next, because that was one of my my Christmas gifts from my husband. So I wanted that. I wanted to look at that colorway at least, but it was sold out. I guess it sold out the first day, but she lets you, you know, purchase it, and free shipping if you purchase it at the Fiber Festival. Okay, so another dyer that I know about, a thing for string, but what I heard through Laura on Jinx Handmade was that she does a lot of, she'll spin her dyed fiber, and it is excellent. I got this Catskill Pines. Everything looks really dark to me on the screen, but isn't that beautiful? So it's superwash merino, and I was thinking it would be great for a fingering weight color work yoke in something, or else maybe color work ferrule type thing, some kind of accessory. But it's quite a bit. It's 446 yards, so I'm thinking the yoke of a sweater. You know, everywhere we went at this festival, I felt like we were bumping into a booth that had a sample knit by Chitanya. She's like this super sample knitter, super test knitter and tech editor. And she turns them out quickly, and I guess her attention to detail is perfect. You're probably going to see, or maybe you've seen photos from the festival, and you've seen like the sweater she's wearing. It's just meticulous. It's perfect. We saw some at Stunning Strings, and I saw at the Brooklyn Tweed booth, they had one of the sweaters she had knit. And here's the thing, I'm really surprised Brooklyn Tweed was at DFW Fiber Fest, because it's one of the smaller festivals in our country, but they were there. And I thought I saw something last minute about it, and then I thought I imagined it, because I just didn't imagine they would be there, but they were. And it was nice to go by and look at all these colors in person. They debuted a couple of new marled colorways, and I really, really liked Caraway. But what I was looking for, I wanted to get a sweater's worth of yarn at this festival while I was there. I was thinking of Loft for Verena Kaur's Crossing Paths. I'll show you that one too. I have it pulled up for you. It's easier if I do this than if I try to put a million pictures into the video. I'm going to go with ease so that it gets uploaded. So I don't know if you can see, but this pattern has lots of texture. And it almost has a patchwork texture feel to it. And you've heard me say a few times, I really like that look. And then this came out and I just thought, I want to knit this. So I was thinking of Brooklyn tweed for it because it doesn't take that much, like maybe 7 skeins of loft to knit a sweater. That's not bad. And Brooklyn tweed isn't a bad price for high quality, you know, yarn from the US. It's nice. And it's non-superwash. So, let's see if it focuses in good. So it looks, you know, it's a beautiful marl, but I thought this might knit up too busy for such a heavily textured, varying textured knit. But when I saw the swatch of this, it's not like newsprint. When that knits up, to me, it was very subtle. It just mostly looked like very tweedy yarn. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to use this colorway. So I swapped the colors I got. I appreciated Jamie and Liz's help picking out things. And they gave me some advice on my blog, which I also appreciated because, ooh, I need some help there. So that was a sweater. A purchase of sweater yarn. I'm trying to think of some other things I saw while I was there that were interesting. Oh, Miss Babs. Apparently they've been to Fiberfest many times, but I've never actually seen Miss Babs yarn in person. It's something I heard about, and I knew these Yowza skeins were super huge, and it only takes like 2 to make a sweater, depending on what sweater you want to make. And I really wanted to look at getting some of that. You know, they cost a little more than the average skein, but still, for a sweater's worth of yarn, it's not bad. Oh, and they're beautiful colors. So I did get beach glass and walnut to make something striping, and I just felt like these were perfect to me. These are like colors that, I don't know, these are my colors. Especially this. I'm always gravitating toward the blue greens. They were super helpful at that booth. You know, running back and forth to look for stuff and help me out. I mean, you know, I'm shopping there, but still, they didn't have to be so helpful. I did get Coffee Break. Chitanya recommended this colorway, and some heels and toes skein to go with it. So they look really pretty together. Another maker is Anna of Yarn Carnival, and she always has yarn at Hill Country Weavers in Austin. Hill Country Weavers is like one of our big knitting stores in Texas, close to me, very close to where my daughter lives. So Anna has these beaten bronze or copper. I'm putting it here because I'm going to make a pendant out of mine. It's a tapestry needle. It's really beautiful, and I want to make a pendant necklace with it. I don't necessarily want to use it as a needle, though it would be a beautiful, kind of luxurious thing to use. It's a very affordable thing, but handmade and, I don't know, hammered, it just looks really nice. So she had these shawl pins, and I think this is, in fact, you know how they work. Like if you were joining a sweater or a shawl, you just loop it. You just loop it through, and it holds itself in place. It holds itself in place, I say. Yeah. Well, maybe you have to be a little more vigorous about it, but anyway. I love this beaten bronze look to it. And she said that she had this idea because I believe her husband helped her make a hairpin. Or maybe she saw a hairpin and thought that would be a great shawl pin, and then he helped her make this. And I thought, this really does look like a hairpin. Like, I could totally if I had long hair still, I could put it up in a bun with this. So it's actually kind of multi-use. I don't have long hair right now, obviously, but, you know, I'll get lazy with the haircuts eventually, and I will. It'll be very gray by then, I'm sure. By the Bay Yarn Co. I saw them on Instagram, and they do have yarn, but they also make project bags, and they're really well made and very affordable. And they live here in Texas. And so I got this large sweater bag, and it's pretty large to hold a big project. It's holding yarn for a cowl, but I'm holding fingering weight skeins together, so it's like 5 balls of yarn. And then I got this, it's like a knitter's backpack, so it's a smaller bag. It's not the extra large, it's the large size. And then you can wear it as a backpack. So, you know, it's really cute. You can also pull your straps up like this and use it as a regular tote. So, I love this color. I like all the project bags in this color right now. So I was excited to see them in person and be able to see the quality and look at that. Nelson Wood, they have different products they make. You know, a lot of wood carved, turned wood items, like there were yarn bowls and things like that from different shops. That's out of my price range. They're so beautiful. But I'm really excited about this year starting a granny stripe blanket for myself with sock yarn leftovers. And these are ergonomic, a little more ergonomic crochet hooks that they were selling. And so I got a size D. Because I'm a loose knitter, I figure I'm also a loose crocheter. A very little crochet experience, so I don't think you can really see this kingwood. It's just beautiful, the grain of this wood. I thought, you know, it's nice to have a crochet hook that's comfortable to hold, and I appreciated the workmanship that went into it. So I'm very, very excited about starting this. Actually, it's probably the project I'm most excited about starting, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I haven't knit anything since then, really. Okay. So I had that press badge for the podcaster meetup, and I just didn't know what to expect. I see, like, Rhinebeck videos, and they say, well, the podcasters all kind of stand on a hill, and people who watch come and talk with them. They talk to each other. Everybody just chats. And the grocery girls, did I say this? The grocery girls came to DFW Fiberfest. So I figured, oh, there's going to be a lot of people there wanting to meet them. And I wanted to say hi to them too. I watched their show. So we get there, and it's in the center, what they call the Fiberatory. And they have rows of chairs set up like in a theater. And they come out, and everybody's like, it's like dun 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 dun, everybody's yelling and clapping, and I thought, wow, if I were them, I would feel so awkward. Because it's like theater seating, and it's, ta-da, perform, instant stand-up. But they are gracious, and they, you know, are used to speaking to people in groups now. At this point, they've done so many things and traveled different places to meet people for their podcast or their designs that it was no big deal for them. But that was a big crowd of people, and there was this huge line to take pictures with them. So I met another podcaster, Tansy, who does crime scene knits, and it's a knitting podcast, but she's also a CSI in her day job, and so she talks about the two things. But I just had to walk around and look at stuff in between waiting for this line to go down. I got Carson Deemer's book while I was waiting, and it's called Knitting Comfortably, and I was just starting to have irritation with my wrist. I really realized it was a problem then. But I thought if I knit carefully, it'll be okay. And by the time I got home, I knit some on the way home from Fort Worth. It was obvious that I had a problem. So this book's already been helpful, and I've only just been picking things out here and there. I need to sit and actually read it. It's like a textbook. It's really good, but well written and well illustrated. You don't have to kind of figure out what body positioning he's talking about. Great illustrations. So he was there, and he taught some classes on ergonomic knitting and spinning, I think, and actually was signing his book somewhere, but I didn't get a signed copy. I was just grateful to have a copy at all. I think that most of us could use this who do an hour plus of knitting a day. Honestly, I've been working on my posture and the way I hold my body for some time now. But I don't really think about the knitting. I know that it's lots of little fine motor movements, and I probably am not balancing it out with larger ones or different, cross-training very well. So I went back and took a picture with the grocery girls, which you're probably seeing right now. I actually met them a little before that. I saw them in an area, I guess it's like a concessions area. They were sitting down, and I said hi to them. I was driving there to Dallas, and I stopped at a Buc-ee's rest stop, which is like some sort of mecca in Texas when you're traveling. It's just a gas station, and it's huge though. It's got a lot of food, and it's got a lot of bathrooms, and they're clean. That's the reason everyone goes. They sell a lot of little kitschy stuff, but they had this Texas themed stuff, and I thought I should get these little armadillos and longhorn jewelry things. I should get them and make them into stitch markers. I had all the stitch marker accessory stuff in the car, but I didn't really have jewelry making tools with me. I had like a multi-tool, but I got the idea in my head, and so then I had to do it, and I don't know. They were cute to me. I made one for myself while I was at it, one of each, but I'm so weird that way. Excuse me. I've also been sick. That's another reason I haven't been podcasting. I'll get like an idea in my head and I can't let it go. So like the night before Christmas, I'll think of a gift for somebody to make, and I know this is unnecessary. They don't need this. It's just some little junk gift, but I'll stay up till 2 o'clock doing it, and I'll be exhausted the next day, but yet proud that I completed this thing. I cannot say how many times I've done it. The last time I did it, I gave myself a headache knitting big heavy yarn with big heavy needles to make a hat last minute for somebody. And then it turned out just so big. I don't know that it was very wearable, but I finished it. That's what's important. So anyway, they got one of my obsessive gifts. Anyway, they were very gracious. I told them I talk a lot on my podcast, and they said, well, we do too. They do, but they do a lot of showing of stuff. And the thing is, a lot of what they're showing, they're giving away. They are very generous to have giveaways constantly, and they give away really nice things, like pricey or hard to get things, and I can appreciate that. So anyway, they came, and it was exciting for everyone, and afterward I kind of wandered around with Chaitanya. She tried the knitting machine, the sock machine, and I met several knitters in that area from different groups, like Chicks with Sticks is one of them. A couple of knitters from that group, super friendly, and people, it's kind of neat when you stop and you notice, what designer sweater they're wearing, they know whose sweater you're wearing, and or sometimes you don't know, and then you ask, and you could talk about that. It's a neat conversation starter, icebreaker, and it is kind of like you instantly know people, very friendly. So I met Susan, who's Susan Ray Von Konkel on Instagram, super friendly, and I met Mary, who's so many blessings. She actually lives really close to me, and maybe she'd, want to get together and knit. I haven't done a knit night yet. though there is one, and I plan to in the summer, but I know of 2 other knitters that I actually personally know in my area, so that would make 3 that I know, which would be kind of cool to have my own little group of people to knit with, or at least one-on-one. But Mary's also a sewer because, you know, of her handle is so many blessings. So yeah, I'm not that multi-craftual, but it was nice to meet so many people. After doing all that and walking around, we just chilled out and waited and knit in a knitting circle. You know, there were lots of tables set up for people to sit and knit, and I didn't know any of the people at my table, but everyone was so friendly. I fit right in. I think Rhonda, Carla, Heidi, different people I was sitting with, just, you know, welcoming. It just felt like being at home. And I realized that I was sitting next to Susanna. I didn't know before, but she was a designer. She actually has like 200 patterns on Ravelry, and they're all really good. It's Susanna IC on Instagram. I have links for all this in the notes. So it was just altogether really inspirational, a lot of creative inspiration that I was seeing, and very friendly and welcoming. I appreciated it completely. And thank you to Tanya for getting me to go. I probably wouldn't have, because things were getting really busy in my life, and I would have said, oh, I probably should stay, I probably should save my money, blah, blah, blah. But I'm glad that I went, and I appreciate you for that. So I came home to doing our floors. We are finally kind of restoring the flooring because I've told you this, the water from flooding from a hurricane, it didn't get on our flooring, but it sat under the house for so long that it just it kind of weakened the boards. So being an old house, the subfloor was the original floor, and then layers of linoleum and carpet were put on top of it. Well, we stripped all that off to have the wood floors and to finish them when we moved in. And they were very rough looking, but I liked it. You know, you could see where the front porch had been taken in to be part of the house. But I enjoyed that. I liked the natural flooring, but it's weakened now, so it needs to become our subflooring, and we, you know, put more flooring on top. And it's just very old. It's like 100 years old, so almost. So we just debated what to do. And we just went with vinyl plank, which isn't natural. It's, but it's reusable if your home floods. And I have this feeling we need that kind of flooring. Whether we stay here or not, it might be a selling point because the city is not fixing the drainage issues, and new homes are being built down the street, and I just feel like water's going to flow right up to us. So I don't know, maybe it's just negative feelings, but we have had more and more hurricanes in the last decade, and there's been increasing problems with our city and drainage. So I wanted to be careful. So anyway, it's done in this room and our living room. And I think I'm done working on it because the dust from working, I don't know if it's the sawdust and things from my husband cutting wood, because we have to do a base layer and then the vinyl planks. So I don't know. It's got me all congested and sick. That's just been crazy busy. And then moving the furniture all around. But you know, it was a great opportunity to do more year of less style, going through things and getting rid of things. It's been almost a year since I started that process, and it's like, okay, things I thought I want to hang on to this a while and just see, now I know. So out went all the Gore Vidal books. They're gone. A lot of other books too, like self-help type books or religious books that weren't super important. Like, you know, you read it once, you understand it. I got rid of things like that. This was that Martin Story sweater, one of them that I showed you. I wanted to do with Fruity Knitting's Martin Story knit along. It's called Omnia, and it's color blocked, but with this textural stitch that has I'm using a burgundy color all the way through. This is I had quite a stash of this lighter green. It's Wool of the Andes Pampas. And then I'm using, let me pull out all the colors to show you. So Pampas, and then Thyme is the bottom color, and then I'm doing this Current Wool of the Andes. This is Wool of the Andes Sport. So that's the color combo that I'm using. It's just not something I can work on at the moment. So, another thing set aside, I already had an issue. Like I had Guthrie. I began it and then I set it aside for knit-alongs. I get caught up in knit-alongs easily. And Guthrie was just something I was doing solo. So I have Guthrie and I have this now. I also had Jane Richmond's very super bulky sweater, and I was doing it in Lion Brand. I had to order another skein. That's what I was waiting on. I do have that back, and that might be one that won't bother me, but I feel like the weight of it might bother my wrist. We'll have to see. It might be just forgiving, and I can kind of do that crazy robot knitting, and it will be fine. Let's see. The other thing I am trying to do, what I did, I could skein yarn. Wind up yarn. Because the motions of doing that is like this. You have to use your wrists. I had braces on. And let me just say, I could push it. I'm just not, because I want to take care of my wrists. I've always known that it's not good to weed and knit a lot in one weekend, or weed and do pull-ups and knit in one weekend. One of you mentioned on Instagram that braking bikes, pressing the brakes often will irritate you because you're also a knitter or crocheter. Any of those things, I was always really conscious about not doing much. Literally, I would choose between a bike with hand brakes and a backpedaling brake sometimes for that reason. But this is Dirty Lace by Libby Johnson, who is Truly Myrtle. Truly Myrtle photos on Instagram. But I had just cast on. It's like, whoo, look at my progress. But it's a great pattern for just 4 random skeins of yarn. It's a fun lace and striping combo. That looks so dark, but maybe that's coming out. And you can just use 4 different colors. They can be subtle and neutral, or wild and crazy, but because it's just got a kind of a careless or carefree feeling to it, I wanted to use, well, these actually aren't super wild, but it's a color combo I've had for a while for something. Also Madeline Tosh. It's Tosh Mo Light, and I just thought these colors really look nice together. It's Fur Wreath, Pink Clay Optic, Wildflower, and Fog, and I just think they're beautiful together. It's really soft because of the mohair content in the yarn. It's just soft. So I just began. And I hope I like the order that I picked to do these in. I don't really think it matters. And she's having a knit-along in her Ravelry group, and there's a lot of people joining in. It's just going to be a fun knit. And let me say this, and this matters if you have wrist strain issues. It's a knit only. There are no purls in this lace section, so there's no purling with the lace. So that also is I would have knitted anyway, but that's a benefit too. So I'm enjoying, I like having an accessory, a sock, like a scarf or shawl or hat, and a sock and a sweater on my needles at all times. But I'm thinking, because it's lace, and I'm using a size 4 needle, so it's not a 1 or a 0. My socks, I'm not going to do socks right now because of the zeros. I'm not going to do my floozy because it's a size 1 knitting needle, and it's slippery, so it requires a little more effort. But I thought maybe dirty lace is something I can do more comfortably. So let's talk about your answers to my question last month. When is imitation flattery, and when does it go straight into creative theft? How would you keep something original and not borrow so heavily that you're just taking someone else's idea and getting credit for it? I think we all agree that when you're just knitting personally for yourself, if you see something you like that someone else does, it's cool to incorporate it in what you do. But like we mentioned from Mimi's zine last week, it is nice to give a shout out to somebody if they give you an idea or inspire you. Sarah Jane said that she thinks originality is sort of a commercially made up term, that she's heard things go in and out of style. They cycle in and out for generations. And so nothing's truly ever new. She does hear that some things are timeless, though, but, what does that mean? She thought about how, like her son or young people, they often do what everyone else is doing. They imitate for a sense of identity, group identity. It comforts them to feel connected with one another that way. And so it might be similar, with us. She mentioned that in the book Big Magic, Elizabeth says that ideas, we don't come up with ideas, they find us. And if we don't take them and use them, they may find someone else. So she feels like, we're all connected, and so are our ideas. So we can't truly own an idea. That's an interesting perspective. No one can claim sole credit, if that's the case, for an idea. She likes knit-alongs for this reason, because you have this one driving thing that we're all doing together, but we all interpret it differently. And she likes to see how everyone takes a design and, with color or style or maybe modifications, how we share, but we make it our own. She said that, so many people have been naturally dyeing for a long time, and she started, and, she feels good about it. She didn't come up with the idea on her own, but she loves doing it and feels connected to them and everyone with it. I will say, though, that when you're doing a process and making a product that other people are making, yes, other people are doing it, but Sarah is actually doing this work. It's different than like an example I gave in the last episode, buying someone's pattern, reading through it, basically taking their numbers, their idea, and slapping it on your own PDF and saying you did it. That's different because you didn't do the work. What Sarah Jane's talking about is doing something similar to other people, but you are taking the yarn you've sourced yourself, dyeing it with the natural materials you've sourced yourself, and marketing it yourself. So that's genuinely creative. Adina was saying that in academia they focus on plagiarism quite a bit now. She mentioned how in a song, if you take a riff from someone else, or if you riff on someone else, I guess is the way to say it, if you use more than 4 bars of music, it is considered creative theft. But she said, is there really anything new under the sun? How crazy should we get with worrying about this? Again, she said, if it's personal, not for profit, sure, it's okay to do it. But to claim someone else's work as your own for profit would definitely be wrong. But then she said, what if, you use someone else's pattern math, but you change a few details, like what the color work yoke looks like exactly, or you add stripes. For instance, I said Elizabeth Zimmerman's recipe. However, her recipe does not give you all of the math. It gives you the formulas. You're doing the math yourself. So I feel like also her recipe is the basic facts of how a raglan sweater is made. So you know, it's what she's learned. It existed before her, but she put it together so simply for us to understand. But, you know, if I took, say, what's that sweater I'm knitting by Jane Richmond? I can't even think of it. I haven't been able to work on it for a couple of weeks. If I were to take it and add stripes and just basically take her pattern and regurgitate it and say, oh, I've got a striped oversized sweater coming out, that obviously would be wrong. Brooke said that she's never considered herself an inventive person. When she has an idea, she just assumes, oh, that's probably already been done, but maybe she should take some time and run with those ideas and see if she actually has a very inventive, creative side. Just develop them a little. If nothing more, it would flex her creative muscles. That is what I did with the plaid sweater I knit. Have I shown it to you guys? No. You know what it is? I have a million ends to weave in, and I haven't wanted to. But you know what? That might actually be easier in a way. Different on my wrist. Maybe it wouldn't hurt me. I have like an Instagram photo of it. But you know, with all the ends, it looks like a mess. I'm very pleased with it, and I'll get it for the next episode. I'll show it. I'll wear it. That's what I did with that sweater. I just wanted to see if I could, and you know, whatever happened with it. I mean, I was gonna be able to reuse the yarn. I could rip it out, and then if it was worth writing up, maybe someone else would want to make it, and that would be fun. Ada said that she borrows heavily for all of her personal designs. I mean, she's not writing patterns, she's just designing things for herself. She heavily borrows from lots of influences she sees, and then she puts it all together in her own way. And she also felt that originality, people who have original ideas, they practice quite a bit on what they do. I remember my husband read a book, and the man was talking about becoming a master at something, and he said it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become a master. So a lot of us are masters at our knitting, right? The Beatles, they said, they started releasing albums, and they were already like hit quality albums because they spent a year playing every single day in this one club where they got room and board for free. So they got their 10,000 hours. And they just right off the bat, right out of the gate, they were great. Well, I think that's kind of what Ada's saying. That people who are really original, they have worked and worked at their craft. It takes a lot of practice where inspiration goes through many changes, and finally it evolves into our own idea. Newer designs are often just a take on an old classic. They've been tweaked, they're not completely original. But she does see that some people literally take a pattern that's already out, revamp it, and market it. Sometimes they do it for free to draw business to their website. She cited a company that did that. Jen said that, like everyone else, she would never copy something for profit, but she might see the look of a sweater design and say, I want to incorporate that in what I'm already doing, and do that for her own personal use. You know, it made me think, reading about that, about jewelry makers. I would see them talking online about how frustrated they were that they would see their jewelry pinned on someone's Pinterest under DIY or DIY inspiration, and they were like, man, I wish they'd just buy mine and not look at mine to make something. Which I totally have DIY inspirations that are somebody's for sale item. But that's just the way it is in the creative community. You get your inspiration. They got their inspiration somewhere too. Eventual Knit said that she thinks we're more impressionable than we realize, so our similar ideas are probably due to accident, more than a malicious intention. So she likes to credit people for ideas that she gets, just for personal things, because it helps people feel connected, you know, and it gives them, you know, a sense of appreciation. Annette said that she feels like if it's not for profit, copy away. That's the highest form of flattery. But of course, if you were doing it for profit, give credit. I think she means if you're just inspired heavily by someone. Obviously, I know she doesn't mean stealing a pattern, but just inspired by. Ada, the other Ada, said that she was shocked to find that she had started a sweater and she just was making changes, and it was just coming to her organically. As she knit, she would think, I don't want to do this, I want to do this instead. And when she was finished, it looked very much like a pattern that had already been out, that was already out. And she just couldn't believe it was so similar, yet she hadn't seen the pattern before. So, you know, sometimes people really do just come up with similar, they end up in the same place, do some of the same creative processes. That makes sense, totally. The knit along I did, the Wing It Cowl, was to get me thinking along the lines of Ada and the other Ada, who both just devise things. They just decide, I want this kind of sweater, and they just start and they do it. Or they take a pattern and they just totally veer off in another direction as it suits them. I wanted to get myself thinking that way more and write down my process just to kind of see how it worked up. And I was successful with that. Katinka said that she always took inspiration from others, but she ran with it and would create something all her own for herself. She said after she found Pinterest, she noticed that she was creating things that were exactly like what she had seen on Pinterest. And she had to step back and think about that. She's been on the other side where she would be selling items at a local market, and the next year a different table or booth at that market would be selling something very similar. Maybe not the same quality, but a lower price, and it made it very hard for her to compete. So she felt like she just quit. She just quit going to the markets, because selling at these markets, because it was too difficult to make a profit. And that's a shame, because they were undercutting her price and it wasn't the same quality. And I know a lot of people face that. I think that's kind of personal, because a local market, these are people you know. They're people who live near you usually. I can't imagine doing that to a friend or a neighbor or someone. I mean, it's not that I would ever do that to a stranger, but I can see how we don't see someone living across the world selling something. We might not see, oh, well, you know, they're going to have to be competing with me for business. We might see ourselves as not a threat. It's removed, it's social media, it's far away. But when it's your neighbor, you can't hide from that. That's someone you know. You're affecting their quality of life. She does let inspirations influence her now, but it doesn't take over. Many things she creates are a style that's been revisited many times through the last 400 years, but she will personalize it. Adding certain details or different materials, and it makes it her own creation. With knitting, she acknowledges there's a zeitgeist of knowledge, you know. People kind of just come to an idea or a trend all at once. So she said their understanding, a designer's understanding of its process and their capacity to make it available to other people, is what sets them apart as original. Because a lot of these sweater designs, they've been done or something similar. So what makes someone stand out as a master or original would be their way of translating that to other people. That's a very smart way. So, you know, if we're concerned that our idea, if we don't, you know, I'm trying to kind of put all this together. If you're creating something specifically, okay, if you're creating anything inspired by someone, I personally think give them a shout out. Let them know. It makes someone feel good. It might also draw some attention to what they're doing, especially if they're doing it for a living. Why not? Help them. If you're doing something for profit and you're inspired, give them a shout out then too. But make sure what you're doing is changed and translated to be your own take on it. Like I said, several significant changes, and also the way that you go about producing it, kind of like Katinka said. Bonnie said that she did design. She liked reading inspiration stories on designs, and she had them for hers, but she finally quit because she felt like she didn't want to be accused of borrowing more well-known designers' patterns, and she would make things and find that it did look like something that was already out. So she just avoided that whole situation by not designing for a living or a career anymore. She mentioned there's a condition where people will see ideas and then tuck it away in the back of their mind, and later they'll remember it and see it as their own creation. I looked that up, Bonnie, because I had heard of that too, and I've thought of it, like even what I said in the last episode, when you're having a conversation with someone and they like quote you word for word, and it's like a lot of talk, and you're like, that's eerie. You know, you get deja vu and you think, wait, I said that. That happened to me. That, didn't happen to them. Why do they think that? I thought, why? What is that thing where people do that? I looked it up. It's kleptomnesia. And it's when somebody remembers the subject but not the source. And I looked up why that happens, and doctors feel like our minds are more focused on encoding memory for a subject. Like that's usually what we need to know. Where it came from is secondary, so we don't bother with it. So they did tests, and they had a big group of people, and they would ask them questions, and they would say things, creative answers to things, and they found that everyone did that to some extent. They would, over the course of the study, think someone else's thoughts or ideas were their own. But it often happened when a person was about to speak, when they would be the next speaker, they would later borrow the thoughts or ideas of the person who had spoke before them. And they figured out that they were nervously preparing what they might say and thinking about their words, what they were going to say. So they're just kind of halfway hearing what the other person is saying. So later, that stuck in their head, but not the source. And so, they were too distracted to remember the source. Their brain only caught what was most important, which was subject, not source. So they said if you want to prevent that in your creative life or your business, that you should avoid looking at, immersing yourself in things like what you are producing. Well, that would kind of stink for a knitwear designer. I mean, I would say most of them who are really successful and constantly creating patterns, I'm thinking of like Caitlin Hunter or Libby Johnson, I don't see how they have time to knit someone else's pattern. I really don't think they do, unless they keep it to themselves. But you got to be on Instagram. If they're going to different festivals and things, they're going to be exposed to it. But man, that would be a bummer to have to avoid it and worry about that. I was thinking about how George Harrison of the Beatles, I mentioned them earlier, he came out with that song, My Sweet Lord, and later he was sued because it was exactly the music from He's So Fine. And who sang He's So Fine? Was it the Chiffons? I was going to say Chiffons. And it is exactly that. And, he obviously didn't mean to. I don't think he would ever want to borrow from a song like He's So Fine for his My Sweet Lord. But he eventually acknowledged, I don't know how I did that. And he settled. But it can happen to the best of people, I'm sure. So that was really interesting. The George Meyer from The Simpsons, he said he didn't watch Seinfeld the entire time that the show was on the air because he was afraid of borrowing jokes from it accidentally. So he never watched it. Separate little kitten was talking about, I was talking about intermittent fasting, and I just didn't really want to do it. I feel like I've tried to master so many different things with my health and my body. I'm kind of worn out on that. I just want to be kind to myself. Not go crazy, not do anything bad, but just kind of chill out and not worry about it. But she said that she's been eating only once a day for 18 years. And she limits foods. That's just a healthy part. She thinks that limiting foods is like a trend. We're all trying to get healthier, but also being a little more socially conscious and trying to lessen suffering in the world, and for climate justice. So it's a personal and political thing for her, the way that she eats. That's not something I've thought about ever as political. I guess it is. Like if you avoid meat because you don't like the meat industry, or the effect the meat industry has on other human beings, not just animals. I guess you could say that is political. I've never thought of it that way. She eats once a day in solidarity with those who have no other choice. Another thing I've never ever thought of doing. So is that people who just don't have the option because of the lack of food? Little kitten, is that what you're meaning? Those who have no other choice? She has now started to even further refine what she eats by limiting refined grains. And she's doing that in solidarity with First Nations people who had the standard American diet imposed on them. Their lifestyle was destroyed and their stewardship of the land was lost. That is also just, I've never heard of anyone doing that. That's really interesting. And I mean, that's a good thing to be mindful of. We're really here, I know in the States, we're really focused on ourselves. We're pretty much a gluttonous nation. I'm not saying everyone is, I'm not judging everyone, but in general, we just have this attitude of, I see it and I want it, and Spot, and just serving ourselves. Like even me, what I said in the last episode, I'm just really tired of worrying about migraines coming and hormonal health and taking medicine and will this hurt me, and I just want to chill out and just do what I want. Partially that's good. I don't think we should all be like a mess of nerves with every bite of food we eat. Am I going to get a migraine? But I do think it's good to be mindful of the fact that I am really lucky. Like if I had to eliminate everything but my vegetables, I do without regular coffee, but I have decaf twice a week. If I have to eliminate that decaf, that is not the end of the world. There are people who've had a lot harder things happen to them. I can do that. Thinking about what you've done, little kitten, I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks, and it has affected the way I view eating food. I heard another thing that's interesting. My sister told me, and now this had to do with she was telling me because the thing she was listening to, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. The thing she was listening to was focused on people who were trying to lose weight. But it works with people who need to limit foods from their diet because of an autoimmune disorder or food sensitivities. A lady was saying to take a jar and little beads, colored beads, and every time you feel a craving for this food that you shouldn't eat, that hurts you, that is not good for your body, and you know you don't really want to eat it, take a bead, drop it in the jar, and sit and think about it. She said, just go ahead and feel it for like 5 or 10 minutes. Really feel that hunger or that desire. And then put your bead in the jar and let it go on with your day. So you get over it. You don't cave. And the next time you do the same thing. And she said something like at the end of it, you've got the number of beads in the jar. Often at the end of a week would equal, or the end of a month, the pounds that you might have put on. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I thought, here's what I liked about that idea. Just feeling it. And what is the worst that's going to happen? And this would apply to all sorts of things, like well, say there's certain foods I really don't need to eat, or I will run the risk of a migraine. So anytime I feel the desire to, and I'm at a dinner and everybody's having a glass of wine and I'd like a glass of wine, just feel it and then let it pass. I'm not going to get beads and put them in a jar, and I'm not worried about calories that I would have gained or anything, but seeing those beads would be really good, even if it's just mentally thinking, I can do this. I can say no to myself. Obviously, we've all done that at some point, but it was just a different way of thinking about having a token, a visible symbol of, look at how many times in this little jar I chose the right thing and I felt it, and you know what? I was okay. Something I'll do is when I do have something that I, like the last time I went to eat somewhere nice and they had a nice meal and there was wine and I had a glass. I didn't even have a full glass. I just stopped and I was like, you know what? It's really not that good anymore. I'm really not enjoying it, and it is not worth the risk of a headache. And I didn't get one because I stopped it a little bit. But it could apply to anything in life, like negative thoughts. Just beat in a jar, or crabby, grouchy, negative remarks about someone. I don't want to say ugly things toward this person, even though they're driving me crazy. I'm going to stifle that. I'm going to feel what I'm feeling. I'm going to stifle it. I can master my tongue. And you have your mental jar, you put your mental bead in. At the end of the week, you just clink them around and say, I did it! Look! It's your some great reward. But anyway, I got off on that. Melanie of Braid and Tinker podcast, she said that she's been cutting back on sugar. That includes candy, alcohol, bread, etc. And she has felt amazing focus. It has been like night and day at her job. And that's been the best part. Also energy gain. And she's actually lost some weight and she hasn't done anything different in her lifestyle. So that change in focus, though, is really, it's amazing. I don't know how long you've been doing it, Melanie, but it's amazing the difference it can make. In the last few years, as I would, once in a while, I get back on eating sugary things and then I would stop. I didn't feel that great, amazing focus, but I think I just wasn't getting enough sleep. But I know that feeling. I've had that before. So anyway, that's all I know. So let me ask you guys. I had a question. I can't remember what it was. Oh, tips for knitting with sore wrists. How do you cross-train? How do you counteract the repetitive tiny movements of knitting? I know some people use different methods and they rotate them. I used to do that. My problem, though, remember, it wasn't just knitting, because I vary my knitting styles all the time, and sometimes I take breaks and I don't just sit and knit all day. So my problem was something, different activities I was doing that usually probably involve crimping, squeezing, and pulling, wrist action. It was too much, because I guess when you knit, you do run that risk. So what do you guys do? How do you minimize damage or repetitive stress injuries? Please leave me comments, and I need to know these things. It would really help me, and I appreciate all of your feedback and input all the time. I hope you guys have a great, great week. Bye.